All our meetings in order. So, ladies and gentlemen, today is April 20th, 2022. This is a special meeting of the North Kingstown School Committee. I can ask you to all please rise for the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Thank you. And Madam Clerk, if you could please call the roll.
Mr. Blasberg?
Here.
Mrs. Hildebrand? Here. Mrs. Hoskins? Here. Mrs. Lima? Here. Mr. Mather? Mrs. Schott? Student Representative Thompson and Anthony?
Thank you. We do have 4 members present, which is a quorum. So the first item on the agenda are citizens' comments. As always, I ask if you could please read your name and address for the record and limit your comments to 3 minutes. If you could grab the sign-up sheet, Ms. Isaac.
Did everyone sign it?
Thank you very much. The first person is Brian O'Dell.
Brian O'Dell, 152 Salisbury Avenue, North Kingstown. I've never told this story before. When I was a teenager, I got a summer job with some other kids at a factory in Warwick. The job entailed helping several machine operators with simple tasks like loading a machine, filling boxes with finished products, and sweeping the floor. I think the pay was under $3 per hour, but it was important because I earned that money towards college savings. I needed the job. On Monday mornings at this particular company, the area supervisor would call everyone together for a quick stand-up meeting near one of the machines. He did this so we would all know the projects coming up and his expectations for the week. On one particular Monday, as I was standing in the group listening as usual, one of the older machine operators suddenly reached back and grabbed me by the crotch. I jumped away and remember saying something back, probably some version of WTF. I couldn't believe what had just happened. Needless to say, I was shaken up for the rest of the day. But I didn't mention it to anyone. I was too embarrassed. But it happened again a week later. He snuck up behind me and grabbed my crotch again. My reaction was the same, but this time I decided to tell a couple of the other kids and ask them what I should do. They then proceeded to tell me that it happened to them as well in similar fashion. He had grabbed their crotches too. Some creepy old man had molested us. It took us 3 days, but we finally decided to tell our supervisor. We each told our stories. His response was shocking. He told us nothing was going to happen. He explained it away by saying, "That's just Joe. He's been here for 35 years. You're only summer help. You guys just need to shut up and stay away from him." We did. We avoided him. He continued to work there, and we pretended nothing happened. And the thing is, I can still see that creep in my mind's eye today. Even though my experience is minor compared to what others have experienced, it's still burning in my brain and comes back every now and again, even 4 to 7 years later. No one in a position of authority at my summer job did anything about that pervert back then. Creepy Joe was too good of a machine operator for them to discipline or fire. To them, we were just kids, leaving at the end of the summer. That's just wrong. Same is true in the Aaron Thomas case. As Attorney Conlon said in his complaint today, the problem is not just about a single coach. It's about the failure of those entrusted to protect kids and institutional accountability. It's about you. Just know the damage is everlasting.
Thank you, sir. Next person is Ramona Bessinger.
Hi, my name is Ramona Bessinger. I live in Jamestown, 437 David Avenue. I wasn't going to come tonight, but I feel compelled to come tonight in light of the recent lawsuit that's been filed against the school committee and the school. As you know, we've spoken out extensively as parents and had reasonable concerns, not only about the sexualized curriculum that is being introduced in the schools, but the lowering of boundaries and the marginalization of parents and parent opinions and concerns. I'm also very concerned, and I want to express this, about the consulting firms that you have chosen. You've chosen 3 different consulting firms. And as I researched the 3 consulting firms, I noticed that all 3 of them are sort of odd and and unusual. I'm not sure why you would pick from 3 consulting firms that seem very biased and have very strong political ties and political activist opinions. The first one was a consulting firm owned by a superintendent. Second, a consulting firm that has very strong ties to left-wing ideology, extreme left-wing ideology that has been proven to be, well, we know now, unsafe for our students, as it includes gender theories and all sorts of other ambiguous lesson and curriculum materials. The other thing that has been very divisive about this consulting firm is that they are pushing a race-based agenda, which is also very divisive. To divide people by the color of their skin, to marginalize people because of the color of their skin, does nothing, not for people of color, and not for anyone, not anyone at all. I've never seen a community so divided as it is divided now. And I fault all of you for that. You are responsible for the mess that has been created in this school district. It's not funny, it's not amusing, it's very concerning to me. So, I know you're choosing a consulting firm tonight. I suspect it's going to be one firm that will select a candidate based on not merit or qualifications, but a candidate based on their culture or race. That is wrong, and it is demeaning to people of color, and it is demeaning to anyone in this country, any valid or decent candidate who may be applying for this position. So go ahead and select your consulting firm, but understand something. The parents whom you marginalize and discredit and call names and in fact bully and harass, the parents that you do this to are going to be watching very carefully every single step of the way. Okay?
Thank you. Next is Jim McGinn.
Jim McGuinn, 412 Chimney Rock. We need a new superintendent. We need someone to come in and assess the issues, identify the root cause, and fix the issues. And it's not just one issue. The problem is, people I'm looking at should all recuse themselves. You are the problem. It wasn't really maybe you could get out of it until June 18th, when Mr. Oliverio provided his phase 1 report. And then you had a meeting on June 24th, when you let Mr. Thomas go on June 24th. You should have sought to protect children, but you didn't. You kept on every time you had an opportunity to do the right thing, you chose not to. You chose not to release the report until a public records request by one of the media. If it was a public record, why wasn't it released in June? Why did you wait 9 months to do anything about Mr. Oliverio's recommendations? I think you all should recuse yourself from selecting a new superintendent. You are part of the problem. And what I think you should do is, I think what the town should do is, have an independent selection committee to identify a superintendent, and then whoever is on the school committee at that point can approve it. But you are not worthy to do that. You are now accused. And I told you before, you would be put on their oath. And I would also suggest you each get your own attorneys, because it's only going to get worse. You have done damage to the students who were abused. You put at risk other students, potentially at Monsignor Clark. You didn't tell anybody. You didn't put up a warning. Rhode Island law says you have 24 hours to report child abuse to DCYF. Instead, you were pushing all kinds of other issues. You were not focusing. And right now, Mr. Waterman, you're not helping yourself. You've got another APRA issue. Apparently FERPA records were released inappropriately by your attorney. Did you know about that? You are the officer for access to public records requests. You're getting $600 a day. You are not living up to the challenge, quite frankly. You also should look in the mirror. This never should have happened. You could have taken care of this back in last February. You let this man go and told people it was a medical excuse. Children would go into his house with food. Imagine if he let one of those kids in. Imagine if a kid got
Mr.
abused.
McGrath, have to please wrap up.
How does anybody live with themselves if another child, you put other children at risk by your inaction? You had the opportunity to do the right thing, and you chose time and time again not to do that. You should not be part of this
Yes,
selection.
sir, I have to ask you, please wrap up. Thank you. Thank you. Next item, and only item on our agenda this evening, is the school committee's approval of an award of a contract for superintendent and assistant superintendent search. Just one thing I just want to clarify is that we did not select the 3 candidates that are before us. That was a public bidding process. These are the only 3 entities that submitted a bid. So they are the 3 that we have to select from. Any company was qualified, or companies that were not qualified could have submitted bids. These are the 3 that we received. I think the best way to start it off, I have my own, I've gone through the rating sheet based on the qualification criteria that we had. I have my own suggestion. I think we sort of have to start with a motion. Now, when I do this, I'm going to say the firm that when I add up my points that I would award it to, we can go from there, and if you folks have an objection or whatever, but you sort of have to start somewhere. So I think the best way to start is with a recommendation.
Okay.
So based on my own review of the bids and qualifications and prices of the candidates, I'm going to make a motion that we award the superintendent search and assistant superintendent search to NSDEC. They are not the lowest bidder, but they are the middle bidder. And based on the other qualifications, basically in my opinion of reviewing it, we have a long history with them throughout the district doing other work for us. We know them well. We've always been happy with their work product, and I was happy with their proposal as well. So that's my motion. I have a second. I have a second from Ms. Hoskins. So discussion. I don't know if anyone has came up with a different calculation or has an objection to that. We can certainly discuss it further.
My only question and comment was in going through the answers to the questions from the different companies. There were a couple things that stood out in terms of differences between them and the M&J. I'm not opposed to the NASDAQ because I do think having somebody from the New England area would be beneficial, but I'm not sure if somebody from Oklahoma is really a great pick. But one of the things that was the reference checking and the level of reference checking that they do, and I think some of the other ones had more in-depth, so I don't know whether there's a way to incorporate that in the proposal.
Well, we can certainly reach out to them, and there are other options and other ways that we can perform. Remember, we do background checks on every hire within the district, and there are things that we can do even independent of the consultant to check references. And
It's not so much the BCI. I think it was M&J that said not only do they call the reference, then they ask the reference for a reference and a reference for a reference. So they're looking for consistency of the explanation.
Sure.
And the other thing, and I would be remiss if I didn't say it, is that M&J made a point of saying that they intentionally recruit from a diverse workforce. And NASDAQ, when asked that question, indicated slightly that they do, but I think that's one thing to be cognizant of while we go through this exercise.
Thank you. One other point I just want to make is just for clarification for anyone watching or who doesn't understand. Regardless of the consultant that we choose, the ultimate decision is made by the school committee. I plan on at further meetings discussing what type of process we'll have for public input and everything on that. It will be a process, but ultimately, statutorily, the only people that can hire a superintendent would be the school committee. So regardless of whatever recommendations they make or any committee that we form or whatever we choose to do, those all are simply recommendations until it gets to us and we take a final vote on that. So, All right, any other comments or questions?
The only other thing that was different about the NASDAQ RFP is the fact that they kind of broke out all of the expenses, right? So the other two kind of incorporated a lot of the expenses, so there are additional marketing pieces, their advertising, and then their focus groups and their survey. That was all in like sort of one lump sum. I think we probably just need to be conscious of that when we're working with them if this award goes to them. For example, additional focus groups beyond what they propose is an additional $250. So if we decide to do additional focus groups of, different community-based groups or whatever, that's, we'll have to make sure that we're paying attention to the cost.
And it's also
just a little different.
It's a little more a la carte, essentially.
Yeah, which
so
is,
we
it could work
whereas
the
in
other way
Kansas,
too.
Correct.
Yep.
So there are, certain things that they have as options that we may or may not choose to do.
Mhm, mhm.
And then also with the phase 2 part of the search, like if phase 1 shows up more qualified candidates that could bring maybe assistant superintendent, is that viable as well?
I mean, they identify
Within
individuals
phase one,
who might actually work better
Right.
for assistant superintendent.
I mean, they could certainly make those recommendations. I mean, it's up to, remember, the individuals to apply. I mean, if there's
Yeah.
somebody who's applying for a superintendent's position, that does not necessarily mean that they would accept an assistant superintendent's position.
Right.
So they really are sort of, separate.
Right.
So-
But that is definitely something for us to kind of pay attention
Yeah.
to and work with them on. Yeah. I don't have a problem with it. There was one RFP that I think was definitely stood apart and different than the other two. But the other two, I think both responses were great. They were very well organized, very well written, and they both had an enormous amount of experience, which is a good thing. I did see the M&J had a lot of different states, but they hadn't done anything in
Nothing
Rhode
in New
Island.
England, yeah, and I asked that question because I thought it was odd that not only have they not done any in New England, they don't have any New England-based consultants. And I think for me, that's the biggest reason to shy away from them. If they, I would be advocating for them if they had like a base in Boston or something, because I think I was really impressed with their proposal, but it makes me nervous to have somebody, I think New England is very different from other areas. And I don't want to be pulling somebody in and then have them be like, oh, wait a minute.
Yeah. Okay. Any other discussion? All right. If not, we have a motion and a second on the table. All those in favor? Aye. Any opposed? Motion passes unanimously. And that is the only item on our agenda, so I'd ask for a motion to adjourn. I have a motion from Ms. Hoskins, second from Ms. Lima. All those in favor? Aye. Any opposed? We are adjourned. Thank you very much.